Hi, hello, Wagwan. Welcome to another episode of The Group Chat. So today in the group chat, I have a new friend of mine here, Jared. Jared, you want to say hi to the people?
Hi, y'all.
Intros are pretty weird for the both of us, so that transpired, and that's okay. We're just going to keep on going. And before I jump into the topic of today, I think I want to share a little bit about like how we met, since it was like literally about a week ago.
Oh yeah, so I don't just want to throw my glass on it to look articulate.
I hear you.
And am I burning up? I am. When I put the glass on, I felt them slide on. I was like, damn, I know I'm burning up. Okay, sorry, y'all. We met. Okay, so you were. I posted something about an episode I did with a young lady that's unreleased at the time, and we were talking about why women don't give their or if they give their number, why don't they text back if they're willing to give their number? And then you responded saying something, and then I responded back, and then you responded, and then I was like, through this whole bicker, we might as well just make this a podcast. So we should just connect one of these days and then just do a podcast. And a year later, here we are.
About 46 weeks when I say to be exact.
You trying to pull it up right now?
I literally am.
Yeah,
because it wasn't no bickering. We weren't really going back and forth for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he might have thought it was. And my last statement I recall was like, that's the thing. It's not about an argument.
Yeah, it wasn't.
We're just having a conversation. And it's not about, me versus you. It's
it was
about
two different perceptions,
yeah. And, talking about a solution to a problem. And also, I learned from what you shared in that message. I mean, be like, oh, man, I didn't think about it like that. Obviously, I'm not thinking about it from, the guy's standpoint. I'm thinking like, bro, the easiest way to get you out of my face is I'm just give you this number and we're going to both walk away. And I'll worry about it later when you text me and I got to ignore it. But Jared did share with me that that's not fair. Men have feelings too. So since then, I've actually made a conscious decision to not leave hope. I thought
that is the way what I said. Though.
I thought me, at least giving my number and just encouraging the conversation would have the guy think like, okay, there's hope.
No, there's no such thing as E for effort. You try to give him E for effort. That's not how it works.
But that encouraged him to go try again. You know what I mean?
No. I'm trying to keep it clean in your podcast. We might need to go into the next conversation.
But that was my thought. And Jared let me know that it wasn't okay. So I did stop doing it because I did, I learned from that perspective. So I did appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. So that's what brought us here today.
So ladies, if you end up giving somebody your number, have an intention of texting back. Because you give, like I was saying in that clip, N-words hope. And you don't want to do that. You can play on our insecurities.
Apparently. All right, so now we're going to jump into the topic of today, which is entitled conditioning. And I have a previous episode on my podcast that talks about conditioning. I was there by myself, talking a little bit about my own personal conditioning. So now I'm going to have the conversation again with Jared from a fresh perspective with a few different questions and to kind of like, give an overall view of what a person's conditioning can look like, especially nowadays from, coming from a guy's perspective versus my own perspective, and then how that affects you as an adult, right? Because your conditioning starts from the day you come out the womb, and it still kind of like goes on even into like your adulthood. The people that you're around, the school that you're in, the job that you're at, can really influence you into start talking a certain type of way and all that good stuff. All right, so to jump into the topic, don't be too nervous, okay? Look, he's sweating and everything. Okay. All right, can you describe the environment that you grew up in and how it shaped your early beliefs and behaviors?
I mean, it was hostile. It was the trenches, man. I'm just kidding.
I didn't even believe that one bit. Y'all didn't believe that. It's okay. We here.
Okay, seriously. On a serious note, y'all. I play too much. Y'all can see that throughout the podcast. All right. It was calm. It was obviously there was toxicity at some points in time, but it was never violent or hostile. It was calm for the most part from the beginning. I think the most I've seen was my parents arguing. Who hasn't seen that? There were times where it got a little ugly, but never physical. So I would say, for the most part, it was calm. I had a regular childhood, I feel like.
Okay. Were you around like a lot of family or just like the close family for the most part?
It was depends.
Okay.
Like at home, regular days, just me, my mom, my dad. But obviously, Thanksgiving, cookouts, right. Christmas. But it was never like those people came over a lot. It was only like
during those holidays. Yeah. The reason for the season, I guess. And okay, so what type of like values and principles were like the most emphasized in your family?
Oh, the biggest one. Shout out Papa Ray. The biggest one is everybody ain't your friend. Be careful who you keep around you.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, just be aware of who's your friend and who's not. I think that you can take that a long way, because my dad taught me that like at the youngest age, and I understood it, but I never understood it until now, because most of the people I would call my closest friends now are either in jail, they're not doing things for themselves, they were or further down the line when we did keep our friendship, they turned out to be just not the people you want to keep around yourself as far as attaining growth. You want to keep people around you that attain to your growth, positive, honest people that love you just as much as you love yourself. So that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone that you can think of that kind of like grew with you from, younger days till now, to where it's like you guys grew on, the same kind of like positivity versus like the toxic thing that you experienced with like some of those friends that you're no longer friends with?
I would say it was about maybe two or three. First one was Brandon. We still talk here and there now. It's not as close as we used to. It's one of those things where we just fell out in high school. I'll be honest. It was more so his fault. I ain't even gonna put my fault on there. Nah, it was more so his fault. But
you were trying to be nice.
Yeah, but I was trying to be nice. But I ain't gonna put the full blame on him. People go through things in life, true. And he definitely has changed as a person. But that spark that sounds kind of. That's another thing we're gonna go into is masculinity. Yeah, that's definitely. But
there's nothing wrong with a good bromance.
Yeah, and we definitely was a bromance. I mean, it was funny that you say that bromance, because I remember when we were like, how old were we in like how old were you in like sixth, seventh grade? Like sixth grade, let's say sixth grade. That's like borderline 12. Yeah. I remember we were 12 and we joined this rec team together. It was the first time, because we always had been on the rec team, but he was always like a year older. So every year it'll be like, I have to be on the other team, and then the next year I'll be on team, but then he'll come up, then I'll have to come up. So anyway, we were on this team, and these the guys on our team, this is our generation is like where kids are just like bad, just so bad. Like kids are bad. Kids will eat you alive. And so these kids saw how close we were that on the team, and they were kind of, I guess you could say they were jealous. So he's call us, they were like, "Yeah, where your boyfriend there? Y'all always close together."
Yeah.
But
and make it awkward when it wasn't even all that.
Exactly, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier about what were some of the key principles. My dad used to always teach me, like, he didn't teach me the right way. Like I said, he played too much, just like I played too much. He comedic way, but in a way, it was a different way to shift perspective and the narrative and kind of keep a positive perspective on things. He always said like, if somebody insults you, make it into a joke. And so when I thought like that, like obviously I couldn't all the time. I'm light skinned, I'm a young kid, I don't know. Like a lot of stuff's gonna hurt my feelings, but for the most part, that one thing never hurt my feelings, because
you heard it from his mouth. But go ahead, continue. I'm sorry, I just had to point that part out there.
It never hurt me. It was more like even at that young age, I was like, yeah, he's just jealous of our friendship. He's not familiar with seeing a healthy, strong friendship. So yeah. And
that's good. That's really good that you were aware of that at that age, because I think even now as adults, sometimes like we don't realize that the way others treat us is not because we're doing something wrong. Oftentimes because they are jealous, or they have some hate on them, or they have a chip on their shoulder from something that don't even have nothing to do with us, and then they just start to project it on us. That happens like so much. Adults who don't realize where their personal hurt is coming from, or like you said, not having a good example growing up, and thinking that like, two men, sharing affection in a sense for one another is like, I'm trying to find a word to say without, offending anybody.
It's homosexual. I'll say it for you.
But yeah, without, putting a negative connotation on it, or making it what it's not. It's literally what it is. Two men sharing affection for each other. And I lost my train of thought a little bit there. But so I'm just going to jump right into now. You mentioned that like your parents, you've seen them argue, but, of course it was never physical. How was the way that they resolved conflict impacted your approach on disagreements now as an adult?
First off, I'm going to be honest. Mom and dad, terrible. First off, it made me realize, and it taught me that argument solve nothing. Revenge solves nothing. You can't get to a resolution if both sides are just trying to cram who's right into the conversation. At some point, you have to come to some ground, but in order to do that, you have to, sometimes you may just have to step away, calm your nerves, and come back and understand what's the actual issue versus what I think is right and what the other person think is right and what's wrong and what's right. It's communication. You just have to learn how to communicate. And in seeing that with my parents, I learned that, communication is big. I brought that into one of my first ever relationships, and it was one of the biggest factors behind our longevity and the reason why we were so healthy. Healthy to the point we thought we were weird because, we never argued.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
To think that not arguing is weird because that's all we saw growing up.
Exactly.
I can
being healthy wasn't normalized.
Yeah. Which is so crazy. And of course, society definitely has a hand to play in that because it's the same thing that we also see on TV. Like some of the favorite sitcoms back in the day, the parents argued like it was normal. If they weren't arguing, something was wrong.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't wake up mad, they'd be like, bro, what's wrong with you?
The crazy part when I touch on this kind of topic all the time, a lot of people like to say arguing is a part of the what would I say? What would they say? It's like it's a part of the relationship. Like they feel like it's like I've had one person say it's good. Sometimes it's good to argue. I'm like, huh? What? I don't think so. I don't think that should be. I think in the beginning, if you were learning how to communicate one another, but at some point you have to learn raising your voice is not. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to get y'all anywhere.
Agreed. I think I get what that person is trying to say as far as not necessarily arguing is good for a relationship, but having debates or disagreements.
Yeah.
Because, you guys aren't expected to see eye to eye. I think when you go into a relationship expecting to see eye to eye with a person, you set yourself up for failure because that's not reality.
Yeah, it's not about what's right. It's not about what's wrong. It's about what's best for the both of us. So,
and being able to focus on that. I think that's the big thing. Both with relationships, friendships, it's never me and you against each other. It's like me and you against a problem.
Yep.
A problem arises and it's just like, okay, how are we going to fix this? And if we are thinking okay, well, this is your fault. You got to fix it. Your thing is my fault. I got to fix it. It's never going to get fixed.
Right.
But yeah. So, okay. Were there any particular experiences or events in your childhood that you believe have a significant impact on how you view the world?
Almost everything. I feel as if I think we spoke off camera about how my father he didn't shun me from the world, but I was exposed to what I needed to be exposed to, and there are things I just didn't. I had to get out experience on my own, especially when I started getting more freedom to go out this house by myself and just do things out by myself. When my father, what I would like to say, was a gatekeeping me from the world. So,
or more so trying to protect you, maybe.
I feel like he was trying to protect me. His idea of protecting me, and it can go hand in hand because this world is a crazy place. I think until you have kids, you don't understand why parents are like that sometimes. Like I have a friend who's 22 and his mom he still argues with mom about how he go out, like what time he can go out right now. So it's I think like you said, I think it's to protect, but at some point you have to let them experience enough life. But that's a whole other story because when is it safe? Because it's not.
And that's the thing, it's not.
Period, 100%.
And
so go back to what was the question? I went on a whole.
No, so the question was any particular event in your childhood that kind of shaped the way you view the world?
I think one thing was going back. My friend had a friend. The other friend, we were kind of friends, but we were friends through him. So we was friends through my main friend. He had a rough childhood, but some people wouldn't perceive it that way nowadays. They would just say he was a ghetto bad kid versus he just came from a rough life where he didn't have that much guidance. And so he was one of those people my dad would particularly point out not to hang around. And I did as my dad said, and I think one time it kind of fired back on me because we brought him to long story short, we brought him to my family cookout, and it was funny because my wallet had got lost or something like that, and I ended up pointing the finger at the most obvious, and then ended up being he never took it, and
wow.
yeah, I could never forgive myself that day, and it was funny too because who he showed at that the side he showed at that cookout versus who he shows when he's like out and about, it was two totally completely different people, and it like that event really impacted my life. If saying, not just judging the book by its cover, but like seeing where people are coming from, like, you know what I'm saying? It was funny because I was going to do a documentary on him too, and I wanted to kind of use that as a narrative, not just where he came from or what he's going through and where he is now, but kind of capitalize off that. Don't judge a book by its cover, especially when you've never been there. A lot of people like to cast judgment. When they show on Fox News when some kid, is about to get life because he tried to rob another student or he shot somebody. And it's more like everybody will look at them as criminals versus looking at it as a kid that came from a whole, he needs help. He came from a home with no guidance. What's his background? Like, how can we just cast judgment? Like, he just literally wanted to be a criminal growing up. We don't know what he had to go through or what he went through to become the person he is now. So, yeah. And
it's interesting that you said that because in the beginning when you started talking about him, you said he had a rough upbringing versus other people on the outside looking in, they would just assume, oh, he's just ghetto.
Yeah.
And, as if saying that someone is ghetto is just like assuming that they're choosing to live their life a certain way versus like the environment that they were in developed that person, developed their persona, developed their habits. You know what I'm saying? Like if he's in an environment where he has to watch his back every day, he's going to move like he's watching his back every day. And that's going to look suspect to someone who's never had to watch their back every day.
And I like to say it's more of, like you said, instead of a choice, it's survival. Like for some people that's never been through it, for them it's survival. It's not like they want to join gangs. They kind of have to survive. Some people don't have like this kid. No, I don't want to put his business out there.
Of course.
But yeah.
But yeah. All right. So now looking back, how do you think your upbringing has influenced your current beliefs and decision-making process? Like, are you quick to make decisions, or are you always like thinking about, wanting to be intentional about your decisions?
Oh, I thought we was going down the religion route. My bad. That's why I was like.
No. We don't have to go. No. I mean, I will say, life also kind of like mimics spirituality, not just necessarily religion, right? Because there's various different religions with like traditions and stuff like that. But life experiences is a reflection of like the Bible is literally a story of life experiences. So without just saying like, oh, we're going that route, we're talking about real life stuff. And then later we can look back at how it relates to religion or spirituality and then, get a difference of opinion there.
So I guess, what were the two options again? Because you pieced it together perfectly.
So how do your upbringing influence like making decisions? Where it's like, do you make decisions quickly, or do you like really think about your decisions before you make them? Very intentional.
I'm a very much overthinker. So it kind of kills me if I feel like I make the wrong decision, and sometimes that leads to very long decision making. But yeah, for the most part, I try to, especially from that what we just talked about. I made a quick judgment. I made a quick choice to just point the finger. Yeah, and that's kind of brought me to where now when I make decisions, like
think about
is it gonna help me towards the future? So I pretty much put a lot of thought into all my decisions.
Interesting, because the other day when we were talking, we had brought up like, well, you had mentioned like children and not wanting children, and not necessarily not wanting children, but like not feeling like you've learned enough yet to bring a child into this world, because then you're going to be responsible for teaching that kid. So it's just like, instead of just being out here like, man, kids are cool, or you can get a tax write-off, or, well, not tax write-off, but y'all know what I mean. Making a decision because of, it's the cool thing to do, or all of your friends have kids, let's say hypothetically, you're just like, okay, if I'm going to do this, right, this is a long-term commitment, because, once you have a kid, that's it, you're stuck. And it's like, what are you going to be able to do for that kid? Do you feel equipped enough to do that? And then especially looking back at, your childhood and feeling like the dynamics with your family wasn't enough for your growth. You had to go out there and figure some stuff on your own. It's just like, before I can be responsible for someone else's growth, I got to figure this part out first. I got to figure out what my parents didn't have and piece things together and still take from, because, our parents, we still love them, and, they still do. Of course, their intentions are always pure. His plan was to protect you. not necessarily shelter you from the world. He had his reasoning behind it, and that's because of his conditioning growing up and stuff of the sort. So now all of that leading you to being like, you know what, let me really think about this. Let me figure out first who I am becoming as a man, and then I can start thinking about reproducing and bringing someone else into this world that I'll be responsible for, because that's a big responsibility. And a lot of people, unfortunately, it's like so many people out here with kids. Granted, nah, you had a choice. You knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
A lot of times like, oh yeah, they weren't planned, and you realize that you're not prepared for it. So you feel like you might be failing as a mother. But it's just like, one, whether or not it was planned, whether or not it was a mistake, or you don't know what to do at that point, or at some point you have to make the conscious decision to be like, okay, what am I going to learn? What do I need to learn to be a better parent? Or what do I need to learn to give my kid the tool to navigate this world? Because that's what I do with my son. It's like, I started off wanting to protect him. I homeschooled him for the first 8 years of his life. And most people were like, oh, you can't do that. Which is exactly why I did it. Like, don't tell me I can't do something. I'm finna show you. And there was definitely a part of it, me wanting to protect him from the world, because the world is brutal. Like you said, kids are brutal. Yeah. Like, them kindergarten classes, it's rough out there. Okay, watch your kids, protect your kids.
I was bullied my whole life. Like I said, I had the worst. I ain't gonna say I had the worst advice from my father, but like I said, he thought in a different way. I would never tell my son that. Like, I would never tell my son, like, make everything a joke, or respond this way. Like, dude, I'm 5. Like, I don't want to. I want to fit in. I don't want to be different yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Let me go through it a little bit first. Let me fail a little bit. Failing forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, it wasn't me just necessarily. I realized that, one, I can't protect him. That's one thing I realized. Because like you said, because my mom still tries to protect me. I love her. You know what I'm saying? She loves me, so she'll try to do things, and in her mind, this is protecting me from going out there and making a mistake. And I'm just like, the only way I learned is by making mistakes. I'm going to have to go out there and make some mistakes. So because I knew that for myself, and I'm aware that, okay, there's nothing my mother can do to stop me from making a mistake, or for failing, or for, messing something up. So now, what can I give my son to help him when he messed up? Because that's inevitable. Yeah. And I literally tell him that. I look at him and be like, you're going to fail. Because you have to.
That's crazy, though.
but it's real.
At least you can say failure.
Right, that's the thing. There's a difference.
There's a difference.
And that's exactly what I tell him. I'm like, just because you failed, that does not make you a failure. And I literally tell him that over. And I literally sit there and watch him fail. Because he's going to have to get used to it, bro. I'm sorry.
It's the way you say it. I let him look at him and fail.
You have to find a balance, because like, you can't make things too hard, too easy for them, because then they go out there expecting the world to be easy, and the reality is it's not. So it's just like, those things are me being intentional about giving him the tools to be ready to go out there and figure things out on his own.
I just seen a video. It was a little Asian kid and his dad, and it was like some ropes in front of the bridge, and like, it was like a 5-minute video, because the dad got over the strings, but the kid had never been used to that. So in order to teach him, like, the dad never like just helped him get over. He literally sat there for like 5 minutes until his son figured it out.
That's
it was
like
you said, watching him fail, and it was just funny because I just saw that video this morning, so that's crazy.
And I think like the earliest example that I have is like with fire, right? We can tell kids all about, bro, don't touch the stove, it is hot. Do not touch the stove, it is hot. That's the only time they don't do it again. Is after they touch the stove. So like, those are the little life things that I pay attention to and realize, okay, so since you're gonna have to touch the fire, like, shoot, all I can do is just give you some gloves, or tell you, put some Vaseline on it when you're done, or whatever it is you do. Whatever you do to that, help ease the burn, and then you release that, you let it go, and then you pick it up and go in a different direction if you need to. Okay. In what ways do you find yourself repeating some of like the patterns and behaviors that you observed growing up, and like, how do you feel about that?
I got rid of all of them. I'll tell you. I think I can.
There's a few. There's only one or two. There's one or two.
I have to catch it. But like, for the most part, like, remember I said revenge earlier. I used to be big on revenge because I've seen it growing up. I'm not gonna go into detail, but that was a big thing. And then I did something. I'm not gonna say exactly what I did. I did something to my dad where like, it kind of woke me up a little bit, and I was just like, I don't want to be this person.
Dang.
That's literally what I said. I didn't just. It wasn't just the fact that I felt bad what I did. It was the fact I was like, this is not me. I don't want to be this. Like, I don't want to be on the other end of this stick. Like, I don't want somebody to do this to me. So I think I need to change my ways entirely. So It went from just being little stuff to like, you know, when you're playing fighting with your friends and or they might just randomly hit you and you feel like you gotta hit them back. I would train myself to just hold still. That's, I mean, just little things to just train myself. Not that revenge isn't always a key or get back isn't always a thing. Another thing was definitely arguing, which we touched on. I don't believe in arguing. I don't believe in arguments. I believe there's, like you said, ways disagreements or ways to talk about it. We're never, like you said, we're not always going to see eye to eye. But I don't think raising your voice or even having to pass the bear to each other just to be open, it's just immature to me. I think more of that comes from maturity as well, not just maybe trauma or anything. That's just a mature thing. Because like I said earlier, like for example, me and I thought we were weird because we never argued for real. Like there were times that she definitely got mad at me, and there were times maybe like we gave each other this silent treatment maybe for like a couple of seconds until we could cope with our emotions, let it slide, and then we would like have very uncomfortable conversations until it reached a resolution, and then before you know it, like we were mad about that, or like, or like one of us maybe like, yeah, maybe I was a little, you know what I'm saying? I did a little too much, bit. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like if it's not gonna matter, like 5 minutes from now, like don't spend more than 3 minutes on it or something like that. There was a rule I heard somewhere. I just made it up, the numbers, but something along the lines of that. I was paraphrasing.
And something else I want to say too, I realized too, is it's funny because my parents still argue till today, and the way I see it now is too. They don't argue like they used to back then, but they argue about little stuff. And the way I realized, like, if you don't stop the pattern now, it'll get worse and worse and worse, and you'll start repeating your really, really, really bad habits until it becomes just a norm. Like even just from back then, it was probably about something more serious to now it's like little stuff. Can you put the trash in the trash bag? Like, you know what I'm saying?
You don't feel okay if you don't argue.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah.
And one of the key things that you said is that, like, while you were, after you did that revenge thing and you were reflecting on it, you realized that didn't come from you.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful place to be in, because a lot of people are walking out here operating in, like, triggered behaviors, old behaviors that did not come from them. And because they've been doing it for so long, they've embodied it as their own persona. And it's just like, when you really take a look at it, that's not you, that's your daddy. Yeah. You your daddy's son. But and they let those things go unchecked, and then, like you said, it shows up in relationships now you're arguing about little stuff just because that's what you saw growing up, and it became a behavior that you adapted as your own, versus like taking a step back and I was like, this is not me. I don't even want this to be me. Where did this come from? And because you're able to look back and see where it's come from, you're able to detach from it. Now every time like it occurs and you feel like you want to do something, you're like, you know what, that's coming from my dad's behaviors, and I don't want that for myself.
That's exactly how it happened. It was character traits from my mom where I was like, this is evil. Like, I don't want to be evil. Like, this is crazy that I can't even believe I did it. So it just became one of those things where I was like, all right, I got to change for the better.
That is crazy. So now, how does that understanding that, one, your conditioning didn't come from, and, ironically enough too, like, this conversation, it wasn't prepped. I didn't even tell him the topic until like a few minutes before we start recording. And I wasn't sure if you were, bro.
I'm trying, that's why, okay, go ahead.
I wasn't sure how aware you were of your own conditioning. I wasn't sure the direction the conversation was going to go. That's why I was like picking these questions to kind of like pull out of you a little bit. And, we talked about how vulnerability is not like your strongest suit or your go-to thing. I know you're capable of it. Yeah. So I'm glad to see and hear that you are aware that, there are some things that were instilled in you from you were growing up, and that developed a persona that is not completely you. And now you're taking the time to be intentional to figure out who you are. And, redefining yourself outside of trauma. And so, I'm proud of you. I'm going to say that. I really am. I am.
Thank you, life coach.
Because it took me years, to get here.
I mean, I still am healing. I still am trying to, like when you just said redefine, I feel like I'm just now in that process. But I think what we just discussed on were just like little things to change to who I become. Now I'm kind of redefining myself as in, not from that. Never mind. I just repeated basically what you said. How I'm redefining myself, I feel like I'm redefining, figuring out who I am. I think back then I knew who I wanted to be. Now I really need to figure out who I am.
That's good. Okay. And that's the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And I was about to say something.
My fault. Yeah, I threw you off track.
You're good.
And we'll be right back.
And I was gonna try to wrap it up too. But yeah, okay. So yeah, that's why when you said, you were saying that you've gotten rid of all of them, all of those conditions that you took from, your childhood coming up. And I, I jokingly said there's definitely one or two more. But there's likely a lot more than one or two. I'm just like giving you a heads up of what the journey looks like down the road. Because of as much work as I've done for myself, like intentionally looking back at some things that created the person who I was, and then shedding that old self and redefining myself into who I am now, and still growing into that person, I still find myself realizing things that I didn't notice beforehand. Something new happens, and I'm just like, oh, wait a minute, dang, that's crazy. That's why when and that's why I respond this way, because whatever thing that pops up in my memory or whatever,
It's big it's big. You have to be aware of yourself. I don't know when you begin that, but you have to very much be aware of yourself. I don't know when that begins. Like I said, I think most of it is all maturity and being able to allow yourself to reflect on those things too.
Okay, so I think it's so. Bruh, they just won't let me be great.
Yeah.
So I think it starts back from like longer than we can remember, because when you think about it, like a little baby, they are self-aware. They're touching things. They're they're doing it their own way. They gotta taste something. I don't know.
I didn't hear it until you start smiling.
But yeah, they start touching little things. They're being aware, like they're realizing, like, oh, bro, I can take a step, so I can take another one. Okay, and that's where self-awareness really starts. But I think what happens is that life stuff starts to happen, and you forget your innate power, if you will, that you had instilled in you from like you were born. Because it's like when it starts to happen now, when you start to become more aware, it starts to become like second nature. It's just like, oh, okay. You can, just like how you said you caught yourself, when you were expressing rage, and you were able to kind of like dial back and, do things a little bit differently. And that's really what the power of like, for example, shadow work is, going back, looking back at old things, and then realizing how it affects you, who you are, your behaviors and stuff like that. And then once you are more familiar with the behaviors that you want to continue to cultivate versus the ones that you realize is not serving you, it may have served you at one point. Being angry, being revengeful may have served you when you were in spaces like with friends that didn't need to be like in your circle. I'm not gonna say you ever really need to be revengeful. It's not necessary, but it may have been good for who you were then. Or let me not say revengeful, but more so like maybe having like a wall up, right? Because that's a little bit more like, it's not something good, but it's not necessarily so bad either. Like, you're having this wall up because you're trying to protect yourself, and realizing now, okay, now that you're growing into like who you're becoming, you got to bring that wall down a little bit, because you need that wall down so you can let other people in. You need to let that wall down so you can grow, so you can see what other things are outside of who is behind that wall. But yeah, so this was really good. Thank you so much for sharing your conditioning with me. I see that you're a little bit nervous. It's okay. So I really appreciate you sticking through with me from like start to finish.
All right. I'll let you have that one.
It was good though. It was good. This is good. And that's it for this episode, guys. Catch us on the next one, and peace out.